So you've spent countless hours brainstorming, creating, and refining your unique designs. You've poured your heart and soul into creating something special for your customers, but then one day you're scrolling through Etsy and you stumble upon another shop on Etsy that has seemingly copied your designs and is passing them off as their own. That feeling of frustration and disappointment can be overwhelming, and you're not alone. Many Etsy sellers face the same issue. First, we're going to get to the bottom of what Etsy actually considers copying. Then we're going to address how bad a copycatter really does hurt us. And then we're going to chat about 4 things you can do about someone copycatting you. I'm also going to share with you what I actually do when I find people copycatting me. And I don't think it's going to be what you're expecting to hear, so definitely stick around. I do think by the end of the video, you are going to feel better and you're going to have an idea of how to fight back and what is going to best help you moving forward. I do feel like I need to say before we jump into it that the information I'm going to go over is not legal advice. As a small business owner, you'd be responsible for any use of the information. Of course, you could consult an attorney if you have any questions. I am sharing with you what I have researched for myself, what my understanding of what it means to be copied on Etsy is, what we could do about it, and just sharing for you how I've tackled this frustration for myself. So what might Etsy consider copying or IP infringement, intellectual property infringement? Let's take a look at this blurb. It came straight from Etsy. I will link this article down in the description below so you can take a look at it yourself or click the additional links that are within it. It's the Seller Handbook. And in the Seller Handbook, it says right here, if this has happened to you, it's understandable to feel distressed. However, it's also essential to research your rights and know what resources are available. The world of intellectual property can be murky and confusing. What you may consider copying potentially covers a wide range of activity that may or may not be infringement. For example, someone creating an item that looks a bit like yours is different from someone using your trademarked name in a misleading way or posting a photograph you took without your permission. So they really gave us kind of 2 extremes here with a lot of ground to cover between them and don't really define all of the levels between, which leaves us guessing about quite a bit here what really counts as IP or intellectual property infringement. It doesn't sound like something that looks a bit like ours counts. And obviously a trademarked design that or phrase that you have registered would be protected. Honestly, the more I get into my entrepreneurial journey and I'm learning some of the legal stuff behind things, the more I am learning there is just a lot of gray space in this area and a lot of vagueness. The document goes on to say down in this section, intellectual property legal topics are complex and rules vary across the world. If you are concerned about whether your items may be violating intellectual property policies or whether others are improperly using your creations, you may wish to speak with a legal professional in your area for advice tailored to your specific business. This is only scratching the surface of the complexities of intellectual property. Researching the law and speaking to an attorney about your options can help you figure out the best course of action to take in your situation. Although there are many options available, Etsy can't provide legal advice on what you should do or assist you with filing legal action. Throughout the documents on Etsy and throughout their different articles, they do mention many times of getting legal advice. This is just something I've never stopped to do or to invest in. I'm assuming most people are like me and probably the average person isn't going through those efforts. The closest I ever got was making a friend last summer on a cruise, and that person was a trademark lawyer. So of course, I was picking their brain about some of these issues, but even that, it just didn't seem like there were any clear lines. So for me personally, as frustrating as it is, if it isn't an exact copy of my own design, I really don't consider wasting much of my inner light, my energy, or my thought power perseverating and thinking on it. And even if it's pretty much an exact copy, even then I tend to err on the side of moving on rather than spinning my wheels and too much upset over it. I don't want to waste my creative energy being sucked up and rechanneled into this feeling of negativity and upset. I feel like my creative side is really powered by a place of positivity. So if something's bothering me, I am not going to get as many creative listings up. But stay with me. Don't get upset and click away because you're like, she doesn't do anything about it. And you want to do something about it. Because sometimes I do. And I will tell you there are 4 things that you can do. And out of the 4 things, there are 2 that I wind up doing. And I will let you know which 2 they are that I tend to gravitate toward. But before I go over those 4 things with you, we're going to jump on and we are going to look at some interesting results where you'll see why I don't waste too much of my time getting sucked into feeling angry about this and chasing people down. I am using a tool called Everbe here, and you could get some results like this for free. I think you get 10 free searches for the month. And then to get more than that, you'd have to use this paid version of the tool. Now, I'm using it right now for a purpose it wasn't necessarily created for, but you can get all of this information about different listings through Everbe. And we're looking at one of my listings here, and we could see I listed this item 4 months ago. It has 803 total sales. We're not even going to bother looking at the estimated monthly revenue because it's pulling that price based off my loss leader, and it's going to be doing the same thing on my competitors. So really what I pay attention to here is the total sales. So I have 803 sales. This listing has been a great listing for me. And then of course I had copycatters pop up. Here I'm side by side with this copycatter. This is the copycatter that I had numerous shops copy this design, like exact copies. This was one of the very first shops to copy the design, and they are one of the ones that did the best with it. And so they, about 2 months after I listed mine, they listed theirs. They have a bestseller badge on theirs. It is showing 5 sales. I assume they had more sales than that because when I looked at mine, when I went into Etsy and looked at my stats, I had more than 803 sales. So Everbe is collecting information. It's making its best estimate. But if my number was behind, then I know their number was behind also. I took these screenshots about a week and a half ago, so this morning, before I filmed the video. I jumped in real quick, just out of curiosity, to see where we're at now with this. So here the copycat is at 14 sales. I'm showing there the original 803, but just under in the pink box. I'm at 174 sales. So what that means is that the copycat had 9 sales. It's showing an additional 9 sales in the last week and a half, where mine is showing 71 sales. You may have caught the interview I did with my friend Laneta, who went from 36 sales to 600 sales really quickly after changing some important strategies in her shop. We're looking at one of her listings right now. If you want to check out her interview and that video, super valuable. I will link it down below and also link it at the end of this video so you can just tap on it and get there real quick. Now, this is one of her listings. It was copycatted very, very badly. We're seeing here it was listed 5 months ago and she had 191 sales. Here is a copycat, and we see that they really didn't grab much traction with it. Here is another copycat that copied a bit sooner. They didn't grab much traction with it. And here is another copycat that also didn't grab much traction with it. Oh boy, guys, it is thundering here, and Tucky is afraid of the thunder. So he's been sitting at my feet. I just pulled him up to sit him in my lap. I'm having to readjust everything here. Sorry, baby, you sat right on my... Since Tucker makes my life so much more fun, I am going to enjoy him sitting in my lap, and I'll set up a little Tucker cam for those of you that like to have a little Tucker in your life. The interesting thing is about both of these listings is my bestseller and Laneta's bestseller. We both created items that were based on market research. So we used elements in the niche that were doing well within maybe another sub niche of the larger niche. We brought that in and we made something that looked different from what was already there, yet was still using these elements that people were proven. Like we saw people were liking them. And we grabbed traction quickly on these listings, and we were both able to get bestsellers from them. The copycatters, for the most part, were unable to get as much traction as we were able to get because they were not doing something unique. We already had it cornered. Now, it is true there are 2 people that did copy Laneta that wound up getting more of the traction that she did get, because they were bigger shops than her and they copied her, and that gave them a better chance to get in there. As her shop grows, that'll be less of a problem. That was frustrating for me too as I was growing. So just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You will be less affected by it later. The copycatters, for the most part, are never going to be making the amount of money that you're going to be making consistently if you're the person coming up with the design that looks different from everybody else's. So I don't confuse anybody, the 2 people that copied Laneta and actually did make quite a few sales, I did not include them in the stats I was just showing. So there was a number of shops that copied her. Most of them didn't get anywhere with it. All right, we're going to jump in just a moment to the 4 things that we can do to combat this. But first, I just want to mention real fast that I only even bother to try to combat it if it's really very much an exact copy. There was a time that my sister-in-law and I both came across a shop that was copying her things and copying my things. So, for example, one of the things they had copied of mine, and they were not exact copies. It was clear what they had done was they'd taken like a screenshot of her listing. They'd done the same thing with my listing, took a screenshot of it, laid it out, got the fonts that they could get that was most like ours, got the images that they had access to that were as much like ours as possible, and just, laid everything out exactly. So for example, I did a teacher shirt for Halloween. I had taken a phrase that was doing well in the nurse niche, brought it over to the teacher niche. That's one of my tricks. I like to do things like that, where I'm bringing an element in from a different place, and oftentimes it'll grab traction if I'm the first one to bring it into a new niche. So it was a cool phrase for the teacher niche. No one was using it. It was different. I didn't have it trademarked. Anyone else could use the phrase, but I was the first one to think of it. So this other shop owner copied the phrase. She also copied all my colors, all my fonts. I had Halloween candy spread around, and she placed her Halloween candy in exactly the same spots. So while it wasn't an exact copy, it was a copy. That's not something I would report. It's annoying, but I'm not going to report something like that. She actually had a much bigger shop than myself. I was only a couple thousand listings in. She was at 60,000 listings in. So I think I sold like 40 of those shirts. I saw that she had a bestseller. At the time, I wasn't using Everbe, so I didn't go and look to see really what the damage was. Was her bestseller, was she getting as much traction as me? I'll never know, because her shop was shut down. Now, I know that she was copying my things. I know that she was copying my sister-in-law. I didn't see a lot of trademarked things in there. I don't know if maybe she was copying so many people's things that she was getting so many reports, and maybe that was something that contributed to her being shut down. I'm not sure, but I do know that her shop was shut down. Now, besides just accepting it, moving on, making more listings, and just continuing to do what's going to make you money in your shop, which is to make new things, what are the 4 things I've been mentioning we can do? Number 1, Etsy themselves suggests this in a couple of places, and it seems to me like maybe what they prefer us to do. It seems they want us to reach out to the shop that appears to have copied our designs in a polite and professional manner, express our concerns, and provide evidence to support our claim. This could even be screenshots of Everbe, showing that ours was listed first. We might let them know that we understand mistakes happen and that we wanted to draw it to their attention before taking any further action. Maybe the person wasn't aware of the problem. Or maybe they came up with something similar. If you are reaching out to someone that maybe isn't, again, I would only do this if it was an exact copy. If it's similar, I wouldn't personally reach out. But if it's just, not an exact copy, maybe it was just a similar idea they had. Now, Etsy themselves does mention this option numerous times throughout their published literature on the topic, and it just seemed to me that it might be the first line of action they prefer us to take, since it's the first one they list in numerous places. Here we see a little snapshot from the Etsy Seller Handbook. Number 1, reaching out. Sometimes resolving an issue with potential copying can be as easy as sending them a message and bringing up your concerns. It's possible the person wasn't aware of the problem, or they may have just come up with something similar independently. So I mentioned that 2 of the strategies are the 2 that I use, and this is one of them. I was lucky enough when I first started, there were a couple times where my listings, twice actually, they were too similar to someone else's. They weren't direct copies, but I'd be annoyed if someone did that to me, and I just didn't know better. It was within the first couple months of my getting into this. And luckily they reached out to me and let me know and gave me the opportunity to take them down. So I prefer to take that type of attitude toward others, like give them the chance to take them down before I go report them and possibly they wind up with an infringement. This has worked out pretty well for me. Most people that are doing this realize that they're doing it. It's usually a new shop. Sometimes it's a shop with a couple thousand sales, which always surprises me that by then they hadn't learned to do this a bit better on their own. But 9 times out of 10, they've gone ahead and said, I'm so sorry, thank you for letting me know, and taken it down. The second thing you can do is if you are part of some type of group, maybe it's a Facebook group. For me, I have a group of friends and family that are also working on Etsy. So we're our own little group. And then I'm also friends with the mentorship group, as I did a mentorship with Cassie Johnson. If you're not familiar with her channel, I do have a link to her channel down in the description. You should check her out. But we all chat in a group and we look out for each other. So if someone is copying our design, sometimes we'll let the group know, hey, this group is copying, and maybe we know about some of each other's niches, and we'll say, oh, especially in this particular niche, you might want to check it out and make sure your things aren't being copied. And I mean, we're talking about people that are actually just lifting the mock-up photos or lifting the designs right off the shirts and removing the background. So you might want to just stay aware and kind of put your heads together. Maybe you all reach out to the shop owner within a certain amount of time, because that would kind of speak volumes to that shop owner that, oh boy, everyone's realizing that I'm copying their things. But sometimes it can help you if you are in communication with other people. And number 3, you can file a report. I personally have never actually done this. Before it gets to that point, I've either let it go or reached out to them. Most of the time they take it down if I reach out to them. On occasion when they have not taken it down, maybe 2 times out of 10 they don't. I've just let it go and I've moved on. But you certainly can file a report. Now, on the topic of filing a report, a couple of things that I have found in the literature, in accordance with our intellectual property policy, Etsy only accepts reports from the intellectual property owner or someone authorized by the owner. Since improper reports without sufficient information will be rejected, speak with an attorney if you aren't sure about your rights. Abuse of our reporting system or knowingly filing false claims violates not just Etsy policies, but may also violate applicable law. And in the Seller Handbook, I also found we also require that the complaining party provide statements of good faith made under the penalty of perjury. There could be costly penalties if a complaining party makes material misrepresentations about the infringement. These claims are very serious matters. So, just before filing a report, make sure that you really have kind of looked at what Etsy considers copying and that you're really comfortable with the allegation that you're making that they really, are infringing on your intellectual property. And as we talked about earlier, it's just really vague what they consider copying. It just seems like a lot of murky grounds there. So I've been pretty careful with this. Again, I haven't actually filed a report. I've thought about it, and I would file a report. Probably for me, the only time I'm personally going to feel comfortable doing that is if they actually took my mock-up photos, or they actually lifted the designs right off of my products. And the fourth one, and I mentioned there's two that I use. This would be the second one that I really lean into. So I would go back to my original listing. If someone is copycatting that, I am going to try to blow my competition out of the water. And I'm going to do that by going back into my original listing. If I didn't already have a loss leader strategy in place, I'm going to put a loss leader strategy in place. So one cheaper item, so that when Etsy pulls that starting at price, it is very competitive pricing. And I might even put a break-even pricing strategy in place also for a time, so that it can get some extra sales. As people are clicking into that listing, they'll be more likely to make the purchase since it's inexpensive, and then you bring it back up to profit pricing at some point. And also with this, the other strategy I would use is if I was not running an ad on my bestseller to begin with, now I'm going to run an ad on that item that people are copying. So now I've got my break-even pricing, I've got my loss leader, and I've got my ad going, and I'm just going to try to blow that competition out of the water. Really, in the end, it is not the cooks in the kitchen that are making the big bucks. It is the chef that is planning out the recipes. So be the chef, not the cook. Keep creating, and even while the copier might gain a win from time to time, if you are consistently creating those 5-star Michelin recipes, you are going to continue to grow and scale your business much faster than those cooks out there that are just replicating your recipe for success. If you found value from this video, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And definitely keep chatting here with us if you are interested in what happened with Laneda when she had copycatters and employed some of these strategies. But of course, not until after that tip from Tucker. Tucker, take it away!